In this module, we've been looking at the most common issues in grammar, and now we are up to the fourth and final issue, which is subject-verb agreement. Now, what is subject-verb agreement? Well, essentially it means that a verb in a sentence must agree with the subject in number. In other words, if you have a singular subject, then it must take a singular verb. The dog barks. The dog, or dog, is singular. So you have to have the singular form of the verb, which is barks. If you have a plural subject, it must take a plural verb. The dogs bark. Dogs is plural, so you must have the plural form of the verb, which is bark. Now, there are two basic rules to keep in mind, two keys to understanding subject-verb agreement. The first is that we have to correctly identify the subject and verb in a sentence. So if you're not sure about doing that, you may want to go back and review the subjects and verbs lessons earlier in this module. Once we have identified the subjects and verbs in a sentence, then we have to determine whether the subject is singular or plural, and then pick the corresponding verb. Pick the verb that matches. So subject-verb agreement is not very difficult in simple sentences, but unfortunately not all sentences are simple. So we're going to look at 4 situations that can lead to subject-verb agreement errors. And we're going to look at the first 2 rules in this video. And the first rule is when words come between the subject and the verb. In simple sentences, the subject and the verb are right next to one another, so it's very easy to see whether or not they match. For example, the dog barks. Dog and barks are right next to one another. But sometimes we're going to have words or phrases that come in between them. Prepositional phrases often come between the subject and the verb in a sentence. So again, it's very important that you be able to identify prepositional phrases. We went over that as well in the subjects and verbs chapter, also when we talked about fragments. So make sure that you are learning those prepositions, that you try and memorize them if you can. If not, at least keep the handout nearby with that list of prepositions so that you can familiarize yourself with common prepositions. Let's look at an example. The tomatoes in this salad are brown and mushy. So in order to identify the subject and verb, first we need to get rid of any prepositional phrases. In this salad is a prepositional phrase. So we have the subject is tomatoes. Now is tomatoes singular or plural? Well, we know that it's plural, so we need the plural form of the verb, which is are. The tomatoes are brown and mushy. Without crossing out that prepositional phrase, it would be easy to assume that the subject of this sentence is salad, because salad is right next to the verb. But salad is not the subject because it is part of a prepositional phrase. All right, the second rule is that sometimes a verb will come before the subject, which can seem a little confusing at times. This happens when we begin a sentence with here or there, and it often happens when we ask a who, which, what, or where question. Let's take a look at a few examples here. Where is your proof of insurance? Now, the subject of this sentence is not where, the sentence is proof, even though it comes after the verb. Here is my proof of insurance. And again, this isn't a question, this is a here statement. And the subject is still proof, even though it comes after the verb. Proof is singular, and so we need the singular form of the verb is. What is the capital of Louisiana? Again, we have a question, a what question, and capital is the subject. And since capital is singular, we use the singular form of the verb, which is. There are many interesting places to visit in Louisiana. If we cross out any prepositional phrases, that gets rid of to visit and in Louisiana. That leaves us with there are many interesting places. So that means that places is the subject, which is plural, so we need the plural form of the verb, which is are. Now, in the next video, we will do some more practice correcting subject-verb agreement mistakes.